out to our June 3rd on 3rd. Appreciate you guys. Just a couple of housekeeping things. If everyone could please turn off your cell phones to the speaker, that'd be very much appreciated. All right. Also, I just have a couple announcements to share. Please join us Wednesday, July 1st from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. for our brown bag lunch event titled Empire in Retreat, the British Evacuation of Amelia Island. We have our very own Peter Hill doing our brown bag, and he will explore the challenges, successes, and disappointments of General Patrick Tone, the second governor of British East Florida, who oversaw the years-long handover of the colony after the American Revolution. So please support us and come out to that. On August 21st, we have our exhibit opening night. Please save the date for Friday, August 21st at 6 p.m. at the Peck Center, not at the museum. We are celebrating the second exhibit opening in our 250th series titled The 250th Relationships in Conflict. This exhibit will feature two exhibits. For this opening, we're going to be featuring the Smithsonian exhibit that is titled Americans. This shows what is remembered, contested, cherished, and denied about Native Americans in the United States and why those narratives still resonate with us today. To bring this vital conversation closer to home, we're going to pair this exhibit with our companion exhibit. And our companion exhibit is by the University of North Florida, titled Visualizing Indigenous Florida. This exhibit corrects the misconceptions about Florida's indigenous people, specifically the Timucua, through authentic contemporary indigenous art. So UNF got a couple indigenous artists from the Seminole tribe of Florida and the Muskogee tribe of Florida to put together contemporary art to correct some of the bad images we have in our museums. All right. Please join us September 7th for Community Appreciation Day. I know some of you know about that. And we're going to have activities and games for the children from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And it is free to come to the museum all day long. So please come out to that. On October 10th, we have our Gravesite Chronicles. It's going to be Saturday, October 10th. We are hosting Gravesite Chronicles Stories of Life, Love, and Legacy at Bos Bellows Cemetery. The guided tours will start at 9 a.m. with the very last tour departing at 4 p.m. Tickets will become available this September on our website. If you are interested in volunteering as our tour guide, please contact Sheila at shelia@amelianmuseum.org. And if you have any questions or anything about our third on thirds or brown bags, please contact me. My email is going to be tirik@amelianmuseum.org, and we also have our information in the back table over there. All right, and now it's my absolute pleasure to welcome our speaker. He is the Distinguished Emeritus Chair of Arts, Humanities, and Technology at the University of Texas at Dallas, and previously served as a longtime professor of computer science for the University of Florida. Please welcome Dr. Paul Fishwick.
Thank you. Thank you. So, is this good? I don't have to put my mic in my mouth or anything like that. Cool. Thank you very much for coming. I know it's a bit of a rainy day, so not the best for traveling. Let me get this. So I will pass out a couple things. Well, maybe I'll pass out one thing, and I'll get to this. Okay, I promise. But you can sort of look at it and kind of guess, what is it? And then,
Rubik's Cube.
It is the Rubik's Cube, yeah, sort of. AI and history, what could go wrong, right? Or what could go right? There's a bit of both. So I'd like to cover that. I'd like to cover things that AI can do to promote our history on the island and get us interested in things. At the same time, cover the issues and things that we should be wary of as we do that. This Deep Looking is a course I'm going to be teaching in the fall for Amelia Lifelong Learning. Just a sort of a shout out, but I'll get to sort of what Deep Looking is as I go through the talk, since it'll be about that. So yeah, I think all of us in this room, we can put ourselves in one of these glasses maybe, or maybe two, maybe three, I don't know. So empty is sort of, I see no value in AI, half empty, sort of focusing, you do some AI, but you're more focused on the issues, right, and the concerns. Half full, you focus on what it can do, but you recognize there are problems. And then full is gung-ho advocate of AI, right, regardless of the consequences. So again, I think all of us can sort of appreciate all of these 4 ways of thinking about AI from what we know. What's my background for being able to talk about this topic? Well, way back when I was a programmer, analyst, and then systems analyst for an old computer that DECFax. Anybody heard of DECFax? No? Okay. Don't worry about it. Yeah, okay. I was faculty at UF for a long time in the computer science department, and when I was there, I focused on bridging the arts with the sciences. And so this has been a long-term thing for me, is connecting arts and humanities with engineering and science, which is a bit of a strange connection, but I'm strange, let me say. Recently, faculty at University of Texas at Dallas, where I actually had appointments in humanities and engineering, and then retired most recently to this wonderful place we call home. And also, I have a consulting business, and I work with Tallahassee on Florida hurricane and flood models. So that's very computer science oriented stuff. So what is this? So one of the things I think is fascinating, and it's not something we can do regularly. We invite people over our place. We can't necessarily pull out an object and go, okay, let's all go around the room and talk about this object, because that's kind of boring. And but if you can do that, it's amazing how we all have different stories. We see presumably the same thing, but not really, right? We look at something, whether it's in a museum or outside, and we all see it very differently. And that's fun, that's cool, I think, right? Is to figure out, okay, what kind of diverse opinions do we have of what we're looking at? And sort of deep looking kind of extends beyond this, but, oh, sorry, the cube, yeah, the Rubik's Cube is being passed around. So, I mean, when I look at this, I see a lot of different things depending on the hat that I'm wearing, or the metaphor, the lens that I'm looking through, right? I mean, I may see botany, I may see computer science, I may see math, I may see history. This amazing plant is a sago, and it's not really a palm, it's a cycad. And what's interesting about its history is they first came about 280 million years ago, well before flowering plants. Okay, these are very old structures. And so you can look at it from a lot of people would just say, look, I got one in my yard, and that's a personal connection, which is a good thing. So I'm just throwing that up there as, think about it, what does it mean to you? Do you have it in your yard? Does a neighbor have one? Have you seen it? If you come from a botany or biology background, you may know well about this, much more than I do. So the deep looking, how can I define that? I would say the first step to deep looking is simply being to notice things. The museum is a great place to start. And of course the curators and the docents kind of highlight things. They'll say, did you know about this? And a lot of times I don't know about those, those things. And so look carefully and be curious. And have a growth mindset. Well, what does the growth mindset mean? It means Carolyn Zweck, I believe, had a book on it, and it essentially means that we, what do we set out for ourselves? It is something that we can have a mindset where we can do anything. You can be a poet, you can be an artist, you can be a scientist, you can do any of that stuff. I think that one of the things that, and I find this in myself, definitely, is that we're our own worst critics in a way. We can't do this and we can't do that, and we're not such and such. So the question is, what happens when you open, and this almost sounds like self-help, and some say it is, but what happens when you say, I can do poetry? That's, you thought maybe yesterday you couldn't, but then you say you can. And it opens up a whole new avenue. So one of the reasons I use AI, one of the things I like to do, and this gets back to the original photograph of a sable palm that was on the front slide, is you can be, I'll get back to the yellow in a second, but you can role play. So I went out to the Sable Palm, well, not to Sable Palm, it's a bit strange sounding, but I went out and I saw one on the way to Fort Clinch. I went to Fort Clinch, then went out the beach entrance on the right, where you go walk on the beach. I looked at Sable Palm and I thought, how would Timucuan look at this? Why did that come to mind? I don't know, but it just sort of, I'm wondering, okay, I know what that is, or I think I know what it is. Again, this is sort of the perspectives on looking at the same thing, but seeing 100 different things, right? And so what I did is, I did use AI. I used my phone. I looked at the palm, and I said, you are Timucuan. And then I gave a couple of other things that I told the AI should do. And then it was going to tutor me and explain the way a Timucuan would look at the sable palm. It was interesting. And then the question is, well, is the AI telling the truth, or is this fabricated? Right? And we'll get to that later, but I would say that to the extent, let's say, it's telling the truth, and I tried to verify what it told me, it was interesting. I mean, one thing said about the beach is it's sort of this spiritual place between the ocean and the land. Well, it kind of makes sense, right? But usually I think we don't think about it like that. But that's the way they thought about it, presumably. And how did they think? Well, this is a whole other story, because the Spanish missionaries were the ones that recorded everything, right? They didn't have a written language, the Timucua. And so you kind of have to rely on a sort of second or third party to try and figure out what they have done. And shout out to the museum because of the digital archives, which I use a lot of, because if you're curious about a particular thing, use either the basic keyword search or the advanced keyword search and find out more information about stuff. So I would say role-playing is a really good use of AI, to the extent that we can trust what it says, right? It's a way, and I've asked questions like I've asked, I want you to be Pip from Great Expectations. Now analyze the photograph, or now tell me what I'm seeing when I use my phone. I look at that. How would Pip look at this? And it's interesting role-playing exercise, not that different than you are Timucuan. What do you see now? And so it's interesting. I asked I went to Egan's Creek and said, well, how would Pip look at this? And it went to some interesting things. Pip's early life, Pip went through different stages, like 3 different stages in Great Expectations. And his first stage was in the marsh, in a kind of swampy area, so he would have been right at home. But then he went into these other stages, and rather than go into the book and the story, I'll just say that I learned a little bit about Pip, and I learned a little bit about Egan's Creek by asking that question. Frank Lloyd Wright about the Williams House, great Victorian house here on the island. Frank Lloyd Wright was not very fond of the Williams House. We have to look at Frank Lloyd Wright's architecture, right, which was kind of minimalist to some extent, very geometric. And so, I'll get to the Williams House in a second because that's one of the things we're going to look at. But anyway, I learned something about Wright, and I learned something about the Williams House by asking that question to the AI. Nana Dune, awesome place to go. And this is one of the things you could look at if you're doing some deep looking, and you look at Nana Dune, what do you see? Because I would guarantee you can see 100 different things when you look at something like this, or look at many things that are of historic value. Classically speaking, well, I'll just point this out. This is something because Dune. Anybody watch Dune? Or maybe read the book by Frank Herbert? Yeah, you knew about it anyway. So, with Frank Herbert got inspiration for Dune, the book, by going out to Oregon, to the Oregon dunes. So he did a little bit of experimenting out there. And I asked AI to assist me with coming up with, okay, you're Frank Herbert, how do you see a dune? Well, dune is a system people trying to control, dune is ecological power, dune is a warning about engineering nature. All of these things came up in the book and the movie, right? These things. Dune is politics hidden inside landscape. Those are fine. When I look at a little bit of nanodune, I'm a computer scientist, so that's a bit odd, right? And I see some strange computer science things. Think about this as, you don't have to go through all of them, but there's a bunch of these nodes, and there are arrows connecting the nodes together. Some people call this a concept map, but you can also call it a knowledge graph. And I'll just read off one of the, otherwise you might have to slog through a lot of writing in order to figure out. And that's the advantage of what's sort of a knowledge graph, is you can do that. So here's nanodune. That's the main concept in the middle, and then we have all of these nodes surrounding it, and you can zoom in and out of this to figure out more about and explore more of nanodune. Now the way I look at this is that when I look at nanodune, one of the things I see that. I don't see maybe that in that detail, but is in information science and computer science, we often use these structures to connect everything together. And in fact, libraries and museums do something very similar. They're responsible for archives, and things are all connected together in a very ordered way, right? And so this is kind of a visual way of looking at that. But I will say that when I look at a lot of things, I do see things in a slightly different way. For me, just like we do as kids, we use models to understand stuff. You're in the sandbox, you want to understand what a car is and what a truck is. What do? You use models of cars and trucks. And you move them around, and you might have a friend in the sandbox with you. Modeling is a fundamental way of understanding anything. And so for me, I did modeling. That was one of my, not modeling as in, like that, but computer modeling. And for me to understand dunes, I thought, well, why don't I create a simulation of dune behavior? And so that's basically the bottom line behind this, is if you look at it, this is kind of an overhead view, and the dune, this is the red is sort of the height of the dune, so you've got some pretty high dunes right here, and some high dunes over here and here. And then if you take a line like this and look at the level, that just tells you the height along that line. It's like a transect. You look at the line, and then at any particular point in the line, it tells you how high the dune was, or the sand is there. So for me, understanding the dune, unlike Frank Hoff, who's an excellent geologist and geomorphologist, he looks at it one way, Mavini looks at it a whole nother cool way, and I'm looking at it like this way, because I can build a model of it, and by building a model, just like playing in the sand with trucks and so on, I understand it, right? So this is sort of just throwing out that here you've got nanodune, and there's at least 3 ways to look at it. It's freedom, Mavini, right? It's geomorphology, or the structure of sand as it moves around. And it's a simulation model. And there's a whole bunch of other ways, too. We could make a poem about nanodune. I'm sure people may have already done that. And thereby understand nanodune through the lens of poetry. I'll get to poetry in a second. I've actually got a poem here. But another way of doing it is, and again, you can help AI, tell AI what you want it to be, the role you want it to play when looking at the dune, and it helps you get some of these answers, right? So one of the things I make one is, you're an art historian. Tell me about the dune. What kind of dunes and dune structures have painters painted for hundreds of years? What kinds of things have they done? And this is one from 1652 with Haarlem, which is a Dutch word originally. And Haarlem is in the very back there, right here. But this is a dune, but it's a very mature dune. It's probably not the dunes you see on Amelia Island that much, unless you go inland to the west of Fort Lynch, the road to Fort Lynch, right? Look at those trees there. So I mean, it's very well situated. The sand that is there is very well structured. Because Frank would tell us, again, Frank Hoff, the geologist, he would say you need to root the sand in order to protect the dune, and the dune protects us with hurricanes and wind. So again, if you're an art historian, well, maybe you see the dune through the lens of multiple painters who have painted dunes. Right? And that's kind of cool. So let's go to the Williams House. Let's transport. We're going away from Nana Dune now, and we're going to enter the world of Victorian architecture, which is amazing on the island. I mean, the number of Victorian houses around here are incredible. So what are kinds of ways we can think about the Williams House? Now, the Williams House has a good story, and there's actually a 3-part biography on the digital archives here in the museum, if you go online, that describes Williams and his history. So the first thing, I used AI, guilty, right? But I used AI and I said, okay, can you tell me what materials were used in the house, and can you draw a sketch? The sketch is pretty reasonable, because I basically gave the AI that and said, you know what, I'd like a pencil sketch. Because I'm thinking like an artist who uses pencils, right? So what does it look like? So it looks like that. But at the top, this is interesting, built in 1856, true, by a Boston-based merchant, true. David Williams, false. Okay, it wasn't Williams, it was the Boston-based merchant. Williams bought the property from the Boston-based merchant. I think the story is that the Boston-based merchant was scared off by secession and decided to, unload the property. So I'm just sort of throwing that up there, and that's the first kind of, I'm going to get to other bloopers and AI stuff that's going on, but you need to be careful on what AI produces, because it just flat out could look great, wow, you made that slide, but it's not correct, right? There are parts of it that aren't quite right. And here's the thing I will say again, but this is important. When you're using AI to play around with this stuff, you may say, well, how do I know? I don't have time to figure out whether it's true or not. And I get that, because your time is valuable. But at the same time you're researching whether it's true or not, you're learning about the Williams House. So that's an interesting thing, right? It's an interesting thing that in order to figure out whether everything you get is correct, you're actually learning history at the same time. So I'd like to put that positive spin idea in your head right now, that in using AI and having to go through it, you're also learning, which I think is kind of an interesting, it's kind of a different way of looking at it than, well, the AI screwed up again, right? Now I will say this, I've been following AI, I used to teach it for many years. It's getting better, it's getting much better. And we'll get to some of that stuff here. So that's kind of my point. Yeah, you can learn history by thinking of the AI conundrum and fallacy as an opportunity. Just a different way of sort of looking at that. So I'm a computer guy and I want to create weird stuff. So I'm a modeler. So I wanted to create models of the Williams House. So I did. Right? And I used an AI program called Meshy, which you don't have, doesn't matter here, but just think about, I used AI, Paula used AI to create a model of the Williams House. Okay, in 3D, so I can twist it around, and I can zoom in and zoom out and stuff. It didn't do a great job on the upper left. There's a shield kind of thing, which is actually not there it's further out into the yard. So I gave it an image and it tried to do what it could. The back of the house, and this just shows you all the vertices and the polygons. There are 4.7 million faces in this geometry. For those that we have to go back to math and geometry. That's a lot. 4.7. 3.7 vertices, so points. So these models are quite detailed, and yet, you know, the back of the house does not look like this because I gave it an image, I gave it a photo, and it did what it could with the photo. Right? So, good, the good, the bad, and the ugly, sort of all in one slide, is that it can do some things, but you have to be careful about what you're getting. And a bit like the knowledge graph I showed before, I took this article from Dickie Anderson, Fernandine Observer 2025, a good story about the Williams house. And I had the AI convert it into very much like a knowledge graph, like I showed you earlier for Nanadoon. And it did a pretty good job. It kind of put the Williams house in the middle and said, well, here's about the architecture and Marcellus Williams, and the origin and the ownership and the location, and so on. So a lot of, I can't only have time to talk about Williams. Really interesting character, did surveying for the train that went from Fernandina to Cedar Key. So he did all that survey. He was a very famous surveyor at the time. So that was kind of fun. But I said, you know, you are Emily Dickinson. Why not, right? Give me a poem. It does an okay job. Now, Dickinson used a lot of M dashes that are called, these dashes right here in her work, and it actually had way more, and I said, this is not right. Let's go back and fix this a little bit. But it's okay, and it's reasonable. I was told by, I have a few poets that I'm in touch with on a regular basis, and I asked them to judge some of these things. And when I asked for a poem in the style of Emily Dickinson for the Williams house, it gave me this, and it did, I would say, a reasonable job. One of the poets told me, it does a solid work of an undergraduate, which I would say is not bad. For most of us, that's okay, all right? And would it do it? No, a graduate student would probably not be happy with it, but that's, for me to get excited about poetry and to enjoy what I'm reading, that level is okay, right? So you will remember, who could forget, right? Those were the great days. Why were they great days? They were the great days because we knew when it was AI. 6 fingers, it's AI. 7 fingers, is it seven? How many, sorry, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, 7 fingers, that's amazing. Did anyone ever know anyone with 7 fingers? No, I didn't mean it.
4 fingers. I know a friend of mine has 4 fingers.
Because he lost one.
Yeah, firecracker X.
Okay.
4 and 7.
Anne Boleyn had 6 fingers.
Now that I didn't know, that's cool. See what you pick a topic and gather everybody in the room, and there's so much information that you can get. That's neat. So here's why I'm bringing this up. It was easy to do back then. A few days ago in the Times, there was an article on AI imagery, and this gentleman basically wrote he can't tell the difference anymore between things that are created today and determining. He's an expert at Berkeley that looked at things for people and determined whether it was AI generated or not. And so that's how far it's come, is that it's really difficult. And I'll show you some examples of things that I've done with some difficulty. So this is a good one. Okay, now I have to say, I'm going to get to this kind of video. I've had a lot of videos like this. it's quite a decent video, but it's a video of historical situation. Secrets of the 1900s, rare footage uncovered. No. No, I'm sorry. How do we know? I mean, it looks pretty good, you know? But you start digging at these things. Again, when you dig, you learn. That's the positive part of digging. Look at the flag. The flag has 7 stars. Oops, that's not right. Okay? So little things like the flag are a tip-off. There's some others that are maybe a little weird. This is a kind of, I think this says respiration right here. So you've got the lungs. So the woman is talking about the pulmonary system. And, but why did she color one of the lungs totally white? That's a little odd. It could have happened, right? Could have happened. But that's a bit odd. Also, if you see this online, you can just look for it. Secrets of the 1900s, rare footage uncovered. This woman and this woman have a discussion going on, and something weird happens. Like one woman hands something to another woman, and it just disappears or something. I can't quite figure it out. But this is a kind of way of figuring out, is it AI or not, right? Again, it's a puzzle. Let's figure it out. This is a really good one, and it's very well done. But there's a key problem with this. Now, I will tell you this, I will give you this information. The car in the foreground is pulling out into the street. If you look at the video, I'm just showing you still. If you look at the video, the car is pulling out. What's the problem?
No driver.
There's no driver. You're like, what? There's a steering wheel, but there's no driver at all in it, which is kind of cool. You see that, you go, okay. But I think it's also sort of disingenuous and a real problem that someone would try and pass this off as historical footage. Right? I mean, this is unfortunately what it's come to. I don't think most people's ethical boundaries, I think, would, in flags would say, well, I'm not going there. But this person doesn't mind. They've got a history channel, and they're churning out these videos left and right. Now, this is a really good one. A lot of these I call magic tricks. So there's a woman right here. These women are crossing a bridge, okay? And there's presumably a lot of wind, because you could see this woman is holding onto her hat. This hat's a little funky looking, right? It's suspicious, I think. This one, the red, it's had a red band on it. But this is a really good one. She takes her right arm and she pulls on the hat to remove it, I guess, but it's going to fly off. And guess what happens? There's another hat there. Okay, so you look at that and, okay, well, that didn't happen. That's not rare footage. Well, it is actually rare footage because there's only one of them, right? The AI that was produced. This I would recommend watching. If you want to look at something like how could AI and history be done in a somewhat entertaining way, at the same time learning a little bit about history. This is called Chloe versus History on YouTube. Now I'm going to show a graph in a second about how this has gone viral, okay, because there's a lot of copycats now. But what Chloe does is she visits something like Pompeii, the Titanic, ancient Egypt, walks around, and it's not a documentary per se, right? It's not a documentary. It's more entertainment, and she's entertaining. She's got a personal perspective on ancient Egypt, and she's going to tell you about that. It might not be your thing. Just, don't blame me, right? No, but check it out if you want to just try something different on YouTube. This is what started it all. This is something that, okay, based on this, Martha and I visited Egypt last December, so I got a chance to look at some of the artwork and learn the language before I went there. And anyway, so I had this created. This was very easy to create in, I think, ChatGPT. And ignore these are just like labels that it put on there because I asked it to analyze it. But it's actually not bad, it's very good. It's very good. The hieroglyphs are not right, unfortunately. I mean, if you look closely at some of the hieroglyphs, this is the small language, these artifacts right here, the hieroglyphs, not the pictures, not these, but these little things right here. Those are hieroglyphs. And they're not accurate, right? But you have to look pretty closely at that.
Hi, I'm Leila. Welcome to Fort Clinch on the north end of Amelia Island. Fort Clinch was started in 1847 as part of the third system of coastal forts. Let's look at a diagram. We're near the entrance, number 1 on the diagram. As we walk toward the central parade ground, we pass the prison on the left, number 7, and the guard rooms on the right, number 8. In the center of the parade ground is a flagpole under repair at the moment. On the left are the enlisted men's barracks. Straight ahead are the storehouse and dispensary upstairs. On the right is a foundation for the unfinished officers' quarters. Let's review that and see where we are. Let's head inside past the raised iron gate. You've seen these in old castles.